financial crisis is clearly not just having an impact on mortgages and credit and banks, but is also very seriously affecting access to food, fuel, water, and other essential commodities. I'm joined today by Her Excellency High Commissioner Lindiwe Mabuza, the South African High Commissioner to London. What is the impact that the financial crisis is having on Africa and other developing countries?
Well, Julia, you know that Africa is one of the poorest, though potentially the richest continent. It affects food, access to food. There have been some uprisings in places in Africa over that. It affects the cost of oil because it has risen so incredibly in the last few months. It's coming down though now, but still, poor people are the worst affected.
And South Africa is one of the most developed economies of Africa. How is South Africa itself affected?
I hear we are not experiencing the recession yet, but I suppose because we're connected to the first world capital, there will be an effect on perhaps some of the insurance companies, because if they are hooked to the ones that President George Bush just naturalized, socialized, they will be affected.
And so the Congress that we're holding in Cape Town in February 2009 to look at what we can do to protect poor people and poor countries from the global economy. Why do you think it's important that we're hosting this in South Africa?
For several reasons. The shortage of food, the shortage of fuel affects people's human rights. It's a right to be able to feed your family. It should not be something that is seen as a gift from above. It is a human right. And South Africa has this history of having struggled for human rights because we're so denied for so long, for centuries. The majority population didn't have the rights as we know them in other parts of the world. Hence the world galvanized, supporting that struggle for basic human rights. And South Africa has gone so far as to incorporate human rights into our constitution, social and economic rights. I know we're involved in that process as well. But the other reason why it's important is because it is a strong economy in Africa. And people must come and experience the difference that the observation of human rights has led us to. And I think that because we see human rights as a central pillar in public policy, that in itself is a good reason to observe how it's applied.
So this is important for us actually, because we're trying to collate the best practice of human rights and responsibilities to act as an evidence base for the guiding principles, so that when we call for human rights and responsibilities as to shape the global economy, we have this evidence. I know that you're a very strong supporter of women's rights. How do you think women's empowerment can improve the economy?
You know, we're only a country that is 14 years old, and we've tried to entrench women's rights into our legislation. But we're still victims of patriarchy. We haven't really gone over the hump. It's a long struggle. But if you don't allow for women's rights in the economy of the country, they're doomed forever. And that's part of our struggle, to ensure that economically women are engaged as well. And there are some successes, but we're especially successful when it comes to the political sphere. We've achieved quite a bit, but not as well as a country like Rwanda, for example, which has 50% women in parliament, or the constitution of the Congo that guarantees parity, men and women, in all areas, levels of governance. But we are doing better than most countries. But it's exactly in the economic sphere that there is a poor performance in this.
The theme of our conference is Ubuntu, from crisis to a just and sustainable global economy. High Commissioner, why do you think the term Ubuntu is so significant here? What does it mean?
Ubuntu can be found in two African groups of languages, Sotho and Nguni groups of languages. A person is a person because of your person.
Right.
Umuntu, umuntu, ngobuntu. Muntu ki muntu kabantu. You can't be an island unto yourself. Your dignity, your personhood has to do with the recognition of the other person's dignity and personhood. But it also has now come to be an idea of unity. The unity of the people of South Africa, the unity of the people of the Southern African region of SADC, the unity of the African continent, the unity of people, the diaspora, and hence connected to the African Renaissance as well. It's an ethical notion that there are certain responsibilities and obligations that people have because they are people. And I will have to recognize your own responsibilities as well as mine.
Well, obviously, bringing people together from different countries and different levels of government, private business and civil society will be important for the Congress. What do you think will be the most important contribution that the Congress will play?
You know, Julia, we've just seen the G20 meeting in Washington. And they're supposed to meet again on the 31st of March next year, with all of the inputs that have been gathered from around the world in order to reshape the economic life of the world. And I think that if you have politicians there, you have representatives of the private sector, you have civil society, you have banks, financiers, it should be a Congress that really galvanizes all kinds of thought for a sustainable development of the world, economically especially. There's so much unevenness in the world. You asked earlier about the impact of the crisis on Africa. I think it's going to be tremendous. We might not see it because we look at Africa, and it is a poor continent, really, comparatively speaking. But it will hit Africa perhaps more than we can imagine. Because the institutions, the financial institutions, are linked also to the financial institutions in the countries that have been hit the hardest, the United States and the UK. So we think that whatever the outcomes from the Congress, they should be feeding into the decisions of the G20 when they meet in March.
Thank you. As far as people who are coming to the conference are concerned, we're inviting politicians, we're inviting the business sector and the private. Who do you think should really be putting their support behind this, both financially and in terms of perhaps changing their agenda to be there?
Oh, I think everybody. I think most countries should want to be represented in a Congress like that. I don't know when we did have something of that magnitude that puts together under one roof the private sector, the public sector, the civil society, and bankers. I imagine all of those decision makers would want to have an input in a Congress like that.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.